Hi there, my name's Jo-Rosie Haffenden and this is my first podcast for Modern Dog Group. I'm the head of behaviour for a company called School for Dogs, which runs in East Sussex. We do behaviour consults as well as classes and lots of fun workshops and one-to-ones. Alongside that, I've also written 3 books. The first one was published a few weeks ago, both in English and in German. So the first one's called The Real Dog Yoga, and it's about using training of positions to help dogs to become calm and also to de-escalate. It's also got a very specific training protocol in there. If you're interested in the Real Dog Yoga book, you can go to the website Dog Books Online, or else you can visit Amazon and find it both in English and in German. So today's podcast is about recall. So I'm going to talk through a couple of things to do with recall, and then I'm also going to talk through very specifically a step-by-step guide as to how to train recall with dogs. So the first thing that I want to go through is problems with recall, and a few of the real common associated problems that I see with lots and lots of dogs that I train on a daily basis in our training centre. When owners come to us with a problem with recall, often there are other things going on as well. So I wanted to just kind of highlight and troubleshoot that with your dogs first, so that we can be making sure that when we go through the step-by-step guide as to how to train a good recall, you're going to have as much success as you can. So one of the real common problems that people come to me with is a problem whereby they're calling their dog, the dog is listening and he's coming back when he's being recalled, but then he gets like a few metres away and decides that he doesn't really want to come back any closer. Very often this is the result of poor handling or handling handling that's a bit too much for the dog when he was a puppy, or else a bad experience with hands. Right from the word go, when we first get our puppies home, the most important thing to train them is that humans, and human hands particularly, are good. Often when puppies pick things up and get annoying, we collar grab. So we're grabbing their collar and moving them from one situation from to the other. And if they don't go in their crates, we collar grab them and we use the lead in a way whereby we're restraining them. When we do this, what we're doing is we're creating this kind of negative bank balance of trust. So we're creating a situation where the dog doesn't like the lead, he doesn't like hands coming towards him. And this makes a real problem. We're making a rod for our backs when it comes to training recall and training dogs to come back when they're called. Because what happens is we say, Fido, come here, and he says, yeah, okay, this is fun. And then he goes, oh, I'm not coming near you if you're going to grab my collar or if you're going to put your hands down. So instead we need to teach him that the hands are brilliant, and there's a little exercise that I'd suggest that you do if you're having that particular problem before you do the rest of the recall training. So what I'd say that's probably best to do is to sit in the garden or sit in your park or even sit in your kitchen if the weather's not great, and reward your dog every time he comes in your area for about 20 treats. So count out about 20 treats, and then as soon as your dog comes in your vicinity at all, say, yeah, good dog, throw the treat on the floor. So he doesn't even need to come and get the treat from your hand for those first 20 treats. For the next 20 treats, just wait for him to actually make contact with you. As soon as he makes contact with you, yeah, good boy, throw the treat on the floor. And then for the next 20 treats, instead of throwing the treat on the floor, as soon as he makes contact with you, feed him the treat from your hand. Then maybe take that outside or into a park or somewhere else and do the same exercise. You can do it on a long line around distractions. All you're doing is you're teaching him that it's nice to have people around. Another really good exercise to do, especially with wriggly puppies, is hold that collar, feed the dog a treat. Hold that collar, feed the dog a treat. You want when your hands come towards your puppy and when your hands come towards the equipment that the puppy's wearing or the dog is wearing, for them to go, yeah, this is time that I'm going to get a really nice reward. Not, oh my God, they're going to restrain me or move me or whatever. So that's problem 1, which is kind of fear-based. So there's another problem that is really common with dogs that won't come back when they're called. And this problem is a problem that stems from the way we use calling our dog back. A lot of the time, owners only ever call their dog back for kind of 2 reasons. The first reason is to pop the lead back on because it's the end of the walk. And the second reason is to call their dog away from something nice. So away from the delicious deer poo that they were going to roll in. Away from the couple who are picnicking in the park, who the dog's going to, definitely go and mug for some sausages. Away from that gang of other dogs that's down the bottom of the park having a really good time. If we do this, what happens is we create this problem whereby we call the dog turns around and goes, oh, they're saying my name, or they're saying that word, because the dog doesn't really understand at this point what's going on, what we're asking him to do. So he hears the word or he hears the whistle, and straight away he goes, that means something else exciting is going on. So if you've got one of these dogs where you go, Fido, and instead of having a dog come back to you, you have a dog that goes, huh? Brilliant, right, and looks for other things to do. And sometimes when I've pointed this out to owners, they haven't been aware of it, and then they've called their dog and they've gone, oh, yeah, that's exactly what we've got. And that usually stems from just calling your dog back at ill-opportune times when something way more exciting is going on, consistently enough that the dog's learn that's what happens. When mum calls me back, it's because something else exciting is going on in the park. So those are two really, really common problems that we see. That second one, if that's happening, you just need to change how often you're calling your dog back and making sure that you use that particular distraction as a reward. So that's a really important thing, and that's something that we're definitely going to use when we're practicing this particular type of recall outdoors. So on step 4, when we start taking it out into different environments, what I'd like you to do is to start using the things that are most distracting as a reward for recall. What that means is when my dog sees the deer poo and I see his nose go down and he starts going, amazing, there's something really exciting over there, that is when you stop, you recall your dog, and as soon as your dog comes back to you, you say, yeah, go on then, go and roll in the deer poo. Go and see the gang of dogs. Go and anything that's appropriate that the dog wants to do that is exciting and good for him, use it as a reward for coming back. To do that, you need to be able to call your dog back enough distance away from those exciting things that's going on. So if there's a gang of dogs down the bottom of the park and your dog's a highly sociable dog who really loves seeing other dogs and you really struggle getting him away from other dogs, your best bet is to go as far away as you need to be in order for your dog to continue to listen to you. Call him back. As soon as he comes back to you, release him onto those dogs as a reward for coming back to you. If you start to practice that regularly enough, you'll start to get a dog where as soon as you see other dogs, or as soon as you see your deer poo or your rabbits in the bush, or whatever it is that your dog wants to go to, you call them back and they come straight back to you. Can I go and see that thing? Can I go and roll in that poo? So it's a really good way of using rewards that the dog sees as functional and particularly fun. And that's particularly true of those kind of breeds, those hunting breeds, those gun dogs, those sorts of breeds where people often say that a recall is really difficult to get or it's not possible to get. Actually, it's really possible to get because effectively you've got control of really exciting things. And you can use that distance and call your dog back to you and release them onto those really exciting things. So you can give them the very things that they really, really want as a reward for coming back. So definitely bear that in mind. And certainly the people who are getting that problem whereby they call their dog back and their dog goes, oh, that means other stuff's going on, definitely use that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk through step by step how to teach your dog a recall. And we're going to do it in 4 steps. But the first thing that we need to go through very quickly first is what does recall mean for your dog? So what does recall mean for your dog? I believe that when you're training a dog something, you can't give it a cue. And when I say a cue, what I mean is a command. You can't give it a command until you can measure it. And to measure something, you have to be able to say, this is a recall and this is not a recall. So if you've got your person here and you've got your dog over here and they whistle, and the dog comes back to here, is that a recall? What about if the dog walks past? Is that a recall? What about if the dog comes 2 meters and doesn't let the person touch them, but comes super close to them? Is that a recall? So what is a recall and what isn't a recall? If we can't define what that is, then our dogs certainly can't. They're going to have absolutely no idea what we're banging on about. So the method that I'm going to use today doesn't view it in quite as arbitrary as terms as just coming back when called. What we're going to do instead is we're going to teach the dog that a whistle means something very specific. For the medium size and large dogs, anything larger than small to be honest, I usually teach a hand touch. So that means I put my hand down and the dog comes and touches my hand when I recall. So it doesn't matter if my dog is here or if my dog is way over there. The whistle still means the same thing. I can still measure it. I can still say, toot, 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 touch my hand. Is that a recall? If he's touched my hand, yes it is. If he hasn't touched my hand, no it's not. Really clear for the dog, really clear for us. For little tiny dogs, you've got two kind of options. You've got the whistle means sit at my feet, or you've got the whistle means target my shoes. So that's exactly the same as the hand touch, but we're just going to replace the hand with the shoes. Okay? Right. So the second little bit that I need to go through first is what we're going to use as a cue. At School for Dogs, what we always do, and what I always do, is I use a whistle. The reason that a whistle is better than just calling the dog is because the whistle is a very specific noise. So we can teach the dog that that particular noise means that particular thing much more easily than we can teach them that this different bit of our language, this different tonation means something. It also stops people from using their dog's name as a recall, because if I say Archie, Archie, Archie at home, yeah, my dog will probably come. He'll probably think, what does she want? But also I use that 1,000 times a day. I talk to Arch, I talk to Ella, I talk to my dogs. Most people do. Most people use their dog's name, you know, between probably 20 and 200 times a day. So to expect them to 100% know and be really clear as to what that means, I mean, dogs are smart, but let's give them everything we can. Let's make it as easy as possible. So that whistle sounds different. The noise carries further. And most importantly, the sound of the whistle doesn't get frustrated. So when I call back my dog using my voice and I say, Archie, come here, and he doesn't come. So Archie, come here, and he doesn't come. I'm going to feel frustrated. Even if I try really hard not to feel frustrated, Archie, come here, please. I'm still going to feel frustrated. He's still going to hear me. In which case he's still going to be choosing between my frustrated voice, mummy being cross, and exciting rabbits outside in the garden. We don't want our voices to feel frustrated. We don't want them to sound angry. We don't want him to have to work out what Archie in a certain context means for me, and that might be something different for my husband, or, you know, your boyfriend, or your kids. We want it to sound the same, we want it to be consistent, we want to give the dog real clarity. Using a whistle gives the dog clarity. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use a whistle, and we're going to teach them, touch my hand or touch my feet. We can measure it, we can be sure that it's a recall every single time, and it is really clear for the dog. We can use a clicker, and I'll talk you through how to do it with a clicker today, but also how to use a tag word. It's both the same thing. We're both talking about, it's both markers. We're talking about marker training here. So we're talking about teaching a dog that when they hear a particular noise, they get a treat. It makes it clearer for the dog that they're getting it right. I like to use a clicker. I think things are much quicker with a clicker. I think things are much clearer with a clicker for a dog. But a lot of people don't, and a lot of people find them difficult to use. If you find a clicker difficult to use, that's fine. Just use a marker word instead. So when I'm talking in training, if I say click, I'll also say or use your marker word. What word you use as a marker doesn't really matter too much. You can use I like to use the word yip sometimes, just a different word that my dogs don't often hear. You can use the word good, you can use the word yes. As long as you say it in the same way each time, it can be clear like a clicker is clear. Although my personal opinion is that it is clearer with a clicker. If you're worried about taking too much paraphernalia out with you, you can get, I don't know if I've got one in front of me here. Yeah, I have. You can get these, which are whiz clicks. So this is a whistle, and it's also a clicker. Okay, so you can get both as one, which is really good. Okay, so we're now going to teach our dogs that recall that we were talking about. So we know what we're using a whistle. That's going to be our cue, that's going to be our command to the dog, I want you to come back. We know that we're going to use a marker, either a clicker or else a word like yes or yip, to mark that they have done that behaviour. And we also know exactly what that behaviour is. It's clear for us and for the dog. We're going to teach our dogs to touch our hand, or else to target our feet, or else to sit at our feet. So now comes onto the training part. I hope you've all got a pen and a paper ready. So, step 1 is to teach your dog that the whistle is meaningful. Now, you're going to put away your clickers. You're going to forget about your tag words and about what we're training the dog to do when he hears the whistle for the time being. For the first week, for a full week, all I want you to do is to whistle and then for good things to happen. Okay? So, what type of sound you're going to use with your whistle is up to you. And if you're desperate not to use a whistle, or if you've got a dog that's frightened of the whistle, then use a different sound and use it in place of the whistle in this training. But in terms of toot toot, toot toot toot, teat toot, all that, use whatever you want. If you decide that you think you might want to do some gun dog training in the future, 3 toots. So you don't have to change it again later down the line. But to be honest, do whatever you want, doesn't matter. We're just going to condition the dog with that sound. So to start with, all we're going to do is we're going to go, and then we're going to give our dog, you're going to go up here. Just waiting for the hand touch because she knows it. Hello. Going to give our dog a treat. And then we're going to go, and we're going to give our dog a treat. And then we're going to go, and we're going to give our dog a treat. And different times during the day, at dinner time, for example, and, you know, when we've got a bit of scraps left over from our meal maybe, and when we are cooking and we've got, you know, a little bit of bacon at the side and we think, now's a good time. All we want to teach the dog at the moment is that when they hear that toot, 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 something yummy is coming. We want them to pay attention to it, ultimately. That's your first step. So to break this down properly, the first step of what we're doing is literally, and then we have a dog. And then we have a dog. Come on, that's it. So actually I've got 2 dogs now. In this part of the training, if you are teaching multiple dogs, you know, train it to as many as you want. So that is your first step of your whistle training. You got your bowl of food. You got your whistle. That's all you need. Keep it in the fridge every now and again. Over the week, whistle, food, whistle, food. We want the dog to pay attention. We want them to hear the whistle and to react. And when you're doing clicker training, we do the same. We click, treat, click, treat, click, treat, click, treat. When we're using a tag word, we say yip, treat, and we do it like that. Because ultimately, this little noise here needs to be the noise that the dogs go, oh my goodness, that noise means something good's going to happen. So before we do anything else, before we worry about teaching anything else in the house for the first week, loads of this whistling equals treat. Okay? So, step 2. Now, step 2, what we're going to do is we're going to put the whistle away. Step 2 actually can happen simultaneously to step 1, which means we can do it at the same time. So over that first week, we can do a step 1 and a step 2 at the same time, because the step 2 doesn't involve using the whistle at all at the moment. Step 3 is when we put this together, but step 2 just involves teaching our dog what it is we want them to do. So it just involves teaching our dog that we want them to touch our hand, or that we want them to sit at our feet, or that we want them to touch our shoe. And we do that with a clicker or with the tag word that we were talking about earlier. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to count out, if you're teaching your dog the touch, 20 treats. And you're going to count out 20 and you're going to pop them in a row. Then what I want you to do is I want you to get one of those treats and pop it between your middle finger and your ring finger here. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to present it down to the dog. And as soon as the dog goes to eat it, we're going to click and feed the dog with the other hand. So the hand comes down with the food in it towards the dog. As soon as the dog makes contact with the hand, we're going to click and we're going to feed from the other hand. The hand comes out again, click, and then we're going to feed from the other hand. After we've done that 20 times, we're going to take the food out. There's no longer food in this hand. We're then going to present the hand to the dog again. We're not going to use any words. We're not going to wiggle our fingers or push it towards the dog or anything. We're just going to hold that hand out and wait for the dog to touch our hand. And if he touches our hand again, we're going to give him another treat. And we're going to do that 20 times. So hand comes out, dog touches hand, we're going to click and we're going to give him a treat. There you go. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start delivering these treats slightly differently. So this time what happens, hand comes down, dog touches hand, and we're going to throw that treat on the floor, away. And something's dying outside of it. And what's going to happen is we're going to throw it across there. It's giving us a bit more time. We're going to wait for the dog to turn around and have a look at us. Then we're going to put our hand back down. So he's beginning to see that this hand coming down is a cue that means touch the hand. And if you touch the hand, you get some food. Throwing the food begins to bring up the energy, which is what we want when we're talking about a recall, because we want our dogs to be coming from A to B, and we want them to be, good boy, we want them to be coming from A to B, and we want them to be coming at speed. So by tossing the treat away, we can begin to, come on then, we can begin to increase the energy of what's happening, so that the dog is starting to run from wherever he is, or she is, whatever else, up to you. So once you've taught that, and you'll get to a point whereby putting your hand out, palm out towards your dog, means they know you want them to touch your hand. That is your step 2. When you're doing the sit at my feet, I can't really show you that on this computer screeny bit quite as well as I can with the touch stuff. But when you want a dog to sit at your feet, what you can do is you can use a tea towel. Now, excuse the state of my kitchen. I can't quite show this as easily because I haven't got a little dog. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mat right by my feet as a visual marker for my dog, so that they know that they only get a click and a treat when they sit on this mat that's right by my feet. And to do that, to begin with, I'm going to lure her so that she's sitting on it. I'm making it really easy for her. I'm making it very clear using my hands what I want her to do. Good. And as long as her paws are on the mat, because she's a big dog, and she's sitting, she gets that treat. Okay? And then what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to wait and see if she'll offer it to me. So after I've done 20 or so treats, whereby my dog gets a click and a treat every time I lure her into the sit, then I'm going to start waiting and seeing if she will just come into that sit with the mat on the floor. Good. Okay, so that's the point. So we're going to practice loads of those. Now after you've done 20 of those, I want you to start picking up the mat. And you're going to be, carrying on doing your cooking or whatever. And then every now and again, you're going to drop the mat on the floor. And your dog's going to sit on it. And you're going to throw them their treat. And you're going to pick the mat up again and move away. Drop the mat on the floor. The idea is that you're going to move around doing this. and you're putting the mat on the floor to indicate to your dog where you want them to be. You're indicating that you want your dog to be right here at your feet, not over there. Okay, so that's why we use the marker of a mat as an indication as to where you want the dog if you're training that sit. So now it's time to bring these two together in step 3. So we've got step 1, which is getting the attention of the dog so that the dog knows that when he hears that whistle, something amazing is going to happen. And then we've got step 2, which means that either when your hand gets presented down or when you put a mat on the floor, the dog comes and either sits on the mat or touches your hand. So we bring these together for step 3 because what we want is we want the cue of that whistle that at the moment is getting the dog's attention to mean for him to do his step 2 behaviour. To do this, because we haven't given any other cue, we haven't taught the dog that when the hand comes down, we're going to say the word touch. We haven't taught the dog that when the mat goes down, we're going to say sit on the mat or whatever. Instead, we're going to use the cue as the command for this behaviour. I mean, the whistle as the command for this behaviour. So the whistle is going to mean to your dog, touch my hand. Or the whistle is going to mean to your dog, sit on this mat. So in the next session, after you've been practicing your step 1s and step 2s for about a week, because that is the concrete that the house is going to sit on. You know, your recall house will fall apart if the foundations aren't strong enough. And that first week of just whistling and treating and just getting those behaviour, you know, either the sitting on the mat or the touching your hand is really, really, really key to getting a good recall. So once you've got those nailed, do 2 weeks if you want, then you're going to bring them together. And so what we're going to do in that first training session where we bring them together is we're going to go and we're going to toot, toot, toot on the whistle. And then as soon as the dog turns his attention and says, that means mummy's got something good, we're going to put our hand down. Or we're going to drop the mat on the floor. So we want that cue, that noise, to become an indication to the dog that we want them to perform that behaviour. And we're going to practice that probably 50 times. So over the course of a few sessions, you're going to start toot, 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 mat goes on the floor, feed. Toot, 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 hand goes down, touches hand, feed. You can throw the food away, which gives you a little bit more time to get yourself back together, get your food back, get your mat back, bring your hand up, have a think about what you're doing, and then do it again. You want to practice that as much as possible for another week, so that's your week 2's worth of kind of homework stuff. You want to really start practicing toot, 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 hand comes down, toot, 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 mat comes down. With the dogs that are sitting on the target mat, halfway through the week, remove the mat. So halfway through the week, you're going to try and take the mat away and you're going to go toot, 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 and your dog's going to come running up and go, where's that mat? And you're just going to hold your hand up in a position where you're kind of suggesting to the dog maybe sitting is a good idea, and then as soon as that dog sits, you're going to mark it with your clicker or your yip, and then you're going to throw the treat across the floor. So you're going to take away that mat as a cue. The mat was there to start with to teach the dog that sit here and make it really easy and visually easy for the dog to understand where you want him to sit. Once we've got that behaviour really frequently and the dog seems to really get that, we can remove that mat. For dogs that find the removal of the mat hard, there's kind of 2 things you can do. First off, you can just rip the mat in half and then in half again, and so slowly wean them off the mat. Or you can reshape the sit. So you can take the mat away, but remember to only click and treat when your dog is sitting in that kind of semicircle that you've got in your mind that counts as a recall. If your dog starts sitting 2 or 3 metres back, maybe bring the mat in again. We want to make it as easy as possible. We want this learning to be completely errorless. We want it to be just easy. In order to make it easy, we have to set up the environment so that the dog is frequently doing what we want them to do. So that is your step 3. Your step 3 is call. So your step 4 is to begin using the recall in the dog's daily life as a way of showing them that something amazing is about to happen. And this is where sometimes you're going to want to use your clicker and sometimes you're not going to want to use your clicker. So step 4 is about kind of using it as part of the dog's life, when he's out in the garden, when he's indoors in the garden. It's not about using it necessarily when he's out running in walks yet. But it's about using it, for example, every day at dinner time. Whistle, 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 dog comes and sits, food goes on the floor. Whistle, 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 dog comes and touches your hand, food goes on the floor. Whistle, 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 dog comes and touches your hand, game of tuggy. Whistle, 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 dog comes and sits on the floor, you let them out for their wee. You're going to start using it as a functional way to teach the dog to get the things that in life they're excited about and things that they want. So once you've been practicing it all around the house, all around the garden, you can start to try and get your dog away from distracting things. So maybe plant some really nice distracting things, call your dog away, and then go and show him that nice distracting thing. Look, Fido, come here, touch my hand, good dog, there's a bone that I planted in the garden for you. That sort of thing, so that the recall is really, really being reinforced as something you do to get something amazing. So when you're more confident about this, start practicing it out on your walks on your lead. Because of the way that we've trained it, there's nothing to say that a recall isn't a recall, even if your dog's right next to you. So if I say Fido, toot, 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 and my dog's on a lead standing right next to me, and I put my hand down and he touches my hand, it's still a recall. The distance is just something that is, it's just an environmental factor. It's not really the command, it's not really what you're asking your dog to do. So practice it on a lead first, and then you're going to practice it on a long line. So this is after you've got your recall. You've done your 4 steps and you've got to a point where you can call your dog off a bone in the garden and come and get a bit of sausage and then back onto the bone. Once you've got to that point in the garden, you've got your recall, it exists, your dog understands what it means, you start practicing it. When you're practicing recall, a really important thing to remember is that we don't want our dog to go from garden, coming away from something semi-interesting, and then shove him into a massive park full of dogs and we let him go, because he's going to fail. And every time your dog fails, coming back when you're called, he's reinforcing that you calling him is something that he shouldn't do because there's something better elsewhere. So we're going back to that first point of using the recall far enough away things that he finds distracting so that you can release him onto those things that are really fun. But more importantly, I'd say think of the world in a bit of a gradient. I mean, I try and think of it like a heat map actually. And I have my kind of cooler areas that are super easy, and I have my boiling areas that are like red. You want to start in blue areas. You want to start in your field, which is fully enclosed and there's nothing too exciting going on. You let him off the lead and you start calling him back and practicing them. And then you can move up to kind of more ambery areas, yellowy areas and ambery areas. And then slowly, until you can walk along the beach where there are hundreds of families picnicking and thousands of dogs, and have a dog that comes back away from things when he's called. So I really hope you enjoyed this first podcast. I'm really interested in your feedback. There are a few things that are really common that are fed back from recall sessions like this. So I'm going to go over very, very quickly some things just so that I save everyone a bit of time. Hair cleaner, I'll admit it, because I don't want to clean. I don't want to clean up my house. It takes too long and dogs make a big mess. I don't want to do it. So I pay somebody else to do it. If it was fun and super exciting, I'd do it, wouldn't I? So the recall is something we want our dogs to do, and it's not super fun and it's not super exciting. So why should they do it for free? We need to put them on like a little pay scale. And if they're coming away from a blue area, you know, your sort of scale 1, nothing exciting going on area, then I'll pay them a couple of quid for doing it. If they're coming away from a red, you know, level 10 excitement area where there are dogs and couples and families and picnics and bikes and scooters and all that kind of stuff, I need to pay my dog, you know, well. I need to give them a real bonus for doing that, because I want him to do it again. If we stop paying people for jobs, they'll stop doing it. So this answers a few questions really. This answers the question of, do I ever stop giving my dog food for coming back? In which the answer is no. If someone stopped paying me to go to work, I'd stop going. We can begin to vary it a little bit, and like I say, we can put a dog on a pay scale with, if he comes back to me in the garden, sometimes he'll just get a game and a kiss and a cuddle. If I forget to bring treats out with me, sometimes she'll just get a game and a play and a cuddle. Because for my dogs, that's probably not quite as high value as bacon or chicken or food. And then if they come away from something super exciting, they'll get food. So we can vary it up a little bit in time when the dog trusts that coming back is worth it. For the first, year maybe of a recall, I would say keep paying the dog. Keep paying the dog highly, because we really want them to carry on doing it. So hopefully that's answered some of the questions that I'm likely to get as a result of this. But if you do have any other questions, feel free to either contact me via School for Dogs website, so that's www.schoolfortheNumberDogs.com, and go to the Contact Us page and contact me on there. Or else you can always put a Facebook comment on the bottom of this videocast and then tag me in it, and I'll try my best to get back to you. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful and a little bit different maybe to some advice that people have got in the past. If there's anything else I can do to help, just give us a shout. Also, if anybody has any comments about future videocasts, particular topics that you'd like me to cover, or particular things that you'd like me to look at, again, do it on the Modern Dog group, or contact me directly via School for Dogs, or at the bottom of this video. I'm open to covering most topics, so just let me know. Okay, thanks very much for your time. Bye bye.